Hey, Cloudcast community, listen up. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a cloud-scale monitoring and analytics platform. Datadog was built to bring clarity to complex, dynamic applications, whether they're in the cloud, on-prem, in containers, or wherever you run your applications. With powerful dashboards, seamless integrations, and more than 250 technologies they can monitor, Datadog has you covered. Whether it's AWS, Azure, or Google services, your popular open source projects and products, or web security and APIs, Datadog can help you monitor them and help you collaborate around troubleshooting them and make sure they're running great. Datadog provides deep end-to-end visibility into the health and performance of modern applications. So, try it yourself. Get yourself a free 14-day trial. Go to datadoghq.com/cloudcast. That's datadoghq.com/cloudcast to try out your free 14-day trial. And if you try it out, let them know your friends at Cloudcast sent you, and they'll send you a great, wonderful, soft, awesome t-shirt with the Datadog logo on it. I wear mine all the time. So once again, that's datadoghq.com/cloudcast. Thanks for listening, and here comes the show.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios in, once again, rain-soaked Raleigh, North Carolina. Folks, it's 2019. Glad to have everybody back. Hope everybody had a good new year, good end of the year, good holidays, and are ready to get back to 2019, get back to work and whatever is exciting that you're working on. We're obviously going to continue to do a lot of things that we've always done on the show, interviews, smart people, new companies, new technologies, and so forth. But we thought we'd start off the year a little bit differently, just to kind of, help people kind of prepare for what could happen in 2019, help them kind of get set to some of the things to kind of focus their learning on and so forth. And so we're going to do a series of shows just to begin the year, the first couple of the year, that are going to really focus on some broad topics. We're going to bring in some experts for those areas to focus on those topics. And so today, very excited to sort of kick that off. We're going to focus a little bit on both DevOps and also sort of an emerging space around DevOps called NewOps. And so very, very excited to have old friend of the show, Josh Atwell, who is a senior technology evangelist or advocate and also co-host of Speaking in Tech. So Josh, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
We see you from time to time because you're here in Raleigh. You just recently started a new role over at Splunk. So tell us a couple of things, just kind of give us some sense of what you're working on these days, because I know a lot of people in the industry know you and have known you over time. But what are you working on these days? And then more importantly, what keeps you interested in this DevOps and NewOps space these days?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I recently switched over to working at Splunk, senior technology advocate. And in that role, I have a lot of focus and emphasis on going out to the community and helping IT organizations, especially the operations side of the house, make these transitions to the new challenges and requirements that have been falling on top of everybody over the last couple of years. I joke, it feels a lot like the conversations I have like I'm a therapist. I'm going in and saying, I know things are changing. I know this is frustrating. I know it's exciting. And, I know you have your reservations and hesitations. Let's kind of talk through those and let me kind of share some guidance and tips and things that other organizations like yours are doing to be successful.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I feel like that's sort of the ongoing conversation is you always find some people that are, eager to want to make some changes. They want to lead the change. They want to learn. And then there's always some point where they go, but our organization's not prepared for this, or so-and-so is going to be in the way, or we got a lot of baggage and old stuff to get through. So yeah, I can totally appreciate the sort of feeling like a therapist, but at the same time realizing like, we want to help them make progress. We want to sort of move this along step by step. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the state of DevOps. Maybe not so much the state of DevOps report that people know from Gene Kim and Nicole Forsgren and others, but just kind of your viewpoint of where is DevOps these days. It's gone through, it's been around for a while. It's gone through a lot of different things. It's gone through, having a focus on CI and CD and the sort of famous, 10 deploys a day. It's gone through infrastructure as code. It's gone through, some things of shifting technology focus to culture focus. Where do you sort of see the community that really focuses around DevOps, and then maybe more importantly, kind of as you're talking to end users, kind of where they see DevOps these days?
Sure. I think the key thing is that the number of successes that organizations have had with applying a framework like DevOps has meant that people are taking it a little more seriously and considering it and adopting it, changing the way their organizations are structured, changing the way that they measure their organizations and the expectations from the organization. And so I think the first thing to say about like the evolution in the state of DevOps is that fewer people are looking at it as some niche thing that can't apply to them, and are starting to recognize that, I can apply those techniques and capabilities. I can adopt those tools. I'm actually having conversations with other people in the organization and realizing that, we have room for optimization. And so I think the current state is that we are seeing more and more groups and organizations adopting the principles of DevOps and applying them and finding some successes. And the State of DevOps report, as you mentioned earlier, is showing that, right? The number of people who are medium performers continue to increase, and their level of maturity, for those medium performers are continuing to grow. Now, there's a spectrum there, right? You've got people who are still, just getting through that trough of disillusionment and feeling the real pain. And then you've got people who have, really pushed past that and developed some maturity.
Yeah. I'm actually glad that you mentioned the sort of medium performers in regard to the State of DevOps report. I know this year they kind of created even a new tier. I think they called them like ultra performers, or, it was sort of like you had high, medium, and low, and then they created sort of a super user category. And I was a little worried about that just because, while that does great for creating headlines, and you can talk about people that have, increased their deployment rates by 4,000%, the more the industry talks just about sort of the cream of the cream of the cream of the cream of the crop, it does make the broader community start to go, oh, well, if I can't get to 800 deployments a day, why am I doing this? So I'm glad that you're focusing more on a bigger chunk of people that 2 deploys a day is a big deal. Having code well documented is a big deal, and so I'm glad to hear you not only focusing on the sort of top headline of that piece of it. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a bit cynical. I acknowledge that, and I try to be very pragmatic with my approach towards DevOps and IT transformation and the changes that people are needing to make. For instance, when I talk to people, and this goes back to the therapy side, I'm like, you don't have to do 4,000 deploys a day per se, right? Your application is not like Facebook that has all these different components that can be updated discreetly and make a tremendous impact, or Google. You don't necessarily need that. The emphasis I put on groups is to say, answer one question for yourself. Can you deploy on demand? Right? If something critical comes up or a new feature is available sooner than you thought, are you comfortable deploying that out and feeling comfortable that you can deploy it out successfully with minimal impact? Right? Obviously, you can't perceive everything that could happen, but what's your confidence level, at time of deployment? And that's where I put a lot of emphasis in talking to people, because I don't want them to feel this, requirement that they have to be deploying a certain number of times a day or certain times a week, right? Your incremental progress is your incremental progress. Your app is your app. How comfortable are you in making that deployment?
Yeah, no, I think that's smart. And again, the lower the barrier to entry that we make for people, the more opportunity there is for people to feel comfortable, taking that first step and taking that leap. And let me shift gears just a little bit. I feel like the DevOps space is going through some transition, and that's normal. Like I said, this this trend has been going on for maybe almost a decade now. It's been going on for at least 7 or 8 years that I can remember. I feel like, DevOps, started as something, it's evolved. We're seeing discussions around things like SRE, site reliability engineers. You and Splunk and some others have started this thing around NewOps. Like, what's what's driving some of that? Is it everything, at some point reaches a point where you have to make it fresh and new, or, are there really some new things that are happening, whether it's SRE, whether it's NewOps that, have to be brought to light for people? What's causing this shift in some of the new things coming out around, started in DevOps, but are now evolving into their own space?
Yeah, it really comes down to diversity of need. It's not possible for one size to fit all, right? I mean, we learned this with virtualization. We've learned it with cloud. We've learned it with ITIL. There's no one size fits all. DevOps provides a framework and a methodology that you can apply. It really provides a framework for how you communicate between teams, how you set goals, how you identify constraints. And the emergence of things like SRE and DevSecOps and NewOps, it's just a sign of the maturity in that those are gaps that needed more clarification, more detail, more second level instruction. If you liken it to telling people to bake a cake, right? Delivering applications and getting those deployed, if you equate that to baking a cake, right? There's some core things that you have to do, right? You have to have certain ingredients. But those ingredients can vary. Like you have to follow a process, a recipe and instructions. How you use that and the tools you use may vary. But in the end, you're going to need to cook it and you're going to need to be able to serve it. And the way you do all those things are different. And as you get into a community of people who are baking cakes, they're going to have different tips. They're going to have different ways of doing it. They're going to develop different strategies. You're going to have the people who like to whip everything by hand and others who like to use a machine. And so the emergence of these specialties, if you will, or these additional frameworks, just a result of like-minded people who have run into similar challenges or certain preferences for what their environment needs or what their organization needs, creating these frameworks and then getting them out the market so that if other people have similar needs or similar desires, they can follow that as well.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Talk a little bit. You're involved with this kind of new thing called NewOps. I sent you over a note, I don't know, a few weeks ago and just said like, hey, send me the TLDR version of what this is. So, obviously we're all sort of familiar with DevOps. What is NewOps and what's it kind of focused on?
So NewOps is strictly focused on the IT operations side of the house and for IT operations professionals who are now being faced with new critical demands, right? The pace at which they're needing to adapt and deploy and change platforms and infrastructure and services. These are fundamental shifts in how operations has to be delivered. There's some core things underneath that haven't changed. Like you still have to have your mean time to resolution and you want to keep your mean time between failure down. But the way IT organizations are starting to be measured and starting to be structured, the tooling that they're bringing in, the increase in collaboration, and like I mentioned before, the increase in pace of those requirements, it requires an evolved breed of IT operations professional. We dealt with this a little bit when virtualization became mainstream, but that was really a transition from physical servers to being x86 virtual servers. You just changed your scale at which you operated and managed, but you're still managing systems very similar to what you were doing before. Now we've got a much higher diversity of things that we're managing in the IT operations space. And so NewOps is targeted to help enable IT operations professionals and to provide that guidance and frameworks and be able to do some knowledge sharing so that they can better support their business. And if the organization is doing DevOps, they better know their place in DevOps and the value that they can add.
Okay, excellent. And we put some notes some links in the show notes for newopsdays.org. A lot of events will be coming up. People can go take a look at them, and probably you'll be speaking at some of them. And but it's a good chance again for, like you said, a community to kind of evolve around people that are realizing, yes, we've gone through this revolution of things becoming more software centric. Better kind of cooperation with the development teams trying to get applications out there. But now this realization of like, yeah, it's not just the software, the infrastructure is no longer hardware, it's software. It's, the operations has to be different and so forth. So yeah, definitely folks should be taking a look at that. In the technology realm around this space, we've seen a lot of focus, like I mentioned earlier, around CI and CD. We've seen it around, the Chef Puppet, Ansible, Salt Stack technologies. We're starting to see it around containers and some of the immutable technologies like a Kubernetes. Are there other technology areas that you're seeing kind of emerge around, whether it's DevOps or NewOps, that people should be paying attention to? I know observability is a word that's starting to come into play a lot of this, but are there other technologies that in 2019 people should be keeping an eye out for, starting to learn about?
I think you actually hit the key one, observability, being able to increase your visibility in what's happening in the environment, as you're merging the teams. And we're seeing is this growth and increase of collaboration between operations and development, and bringing in SRE teams and doing, building specific DevOps teams, which we can have a whole other conversation about efficacy of that. But tools that allow those teams to work better together. And so I think the biggest focus is going to be on how do we improve visibility and transparency between these groups so that we can see where our constraints are in our value stream and our pipeline, what's happening in the environment, and how do we respond to it in a timely manner, which is a classic ops thing, but now incorporating more people. And then the second to that is, what tools are we using to respond? What tools are we using to communicate? I think we're going to see an increase in adoption of chat ops and automated response, as well as AI ML systems that are helping back in and supplement the work that we're doing, so that as we've collected this data, as we see what's happening in the environment, as we're communicating with one another, there are also tools that are improving how we assess what's happening and be able to understand what's happening in the environment much more quickly and be able to adapt to it.
Yeah. The other term I'm beginning to hear more and more is this idea of AI ops. For folks that maybe have heard it but aren't familiar, does that mean that as an ops person, you sort of have to become an AI expert or a data scientist, or is this really more of a trend of AI types of technologies are going to start getting embedded in the tools that you typically use, the things that you might buy from a vendor, use as a cloud service? Where does that fit in terms of skills I've got to learn versus things that'll just be part of the tools I use?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be part of the tools that you use. I look at AI ops as augmented. Right, they're machine learning, their algorithm. There's some base level AI frameworks that can be applied within the existing tool sets that, in order to augment and supplement your effectiveness as an operations professional. The biggest adjustment that we're going to have to make, and it seems like an almost silly one, but it's a very real one, is having trust in those systems. So as more of those systems are released and more that technology is integrated into various platforms and tools that we're using, it's trusting that system is giving you the right move and then making that move. IT professionals aren't always that trusting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's there's a little bit of the, do I trust it? A little bit of the, does it replace my job type of thing? So yeah, definitely something that people are going to have to get used to. Let's shift gears a little bit. We'll kind of come back to your initial comment about being a psychiatrist, about being a therapist. Culture has always been a big part of the DevOps space, whether it was blameless postmortems or folks talked about things like HugOps and really things that were trying to focus around having empathy for the people that you work with, not having a mindset of just, write code and throw it over the wall, that type of thing. Are we seeing, and those are great in terms of people going like, yeah, I should do this. And I went to an event and it seemed good. Are there frameworks now that are helping, different teams begin to communicate with their peer groups or even within their own groups that are taking hold in terms of things that people can go, yes, this is less about there's that one person that's just great and they help everybody, to this is a framework that can scale?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that are making a difference. I think there's still a great deal of baggage that everybody's kind of been holding on to with IT operations and development. Leadership's one of the few things that can really positively impact that the way we need it to. But I think from a culture and framework standpoint, the biggest shift that I'm seeing be adopted is the increase in generalist and T-shaped people, people who are, they may have some depth in one area, but they have a lot of broad general knowledge. So they can look at an entire value stream and add value into that value stream at multiple places. From a culture standpoint, I think more organizations are fostering that, right? They're looking at building out more generalists, applying them in different areas, making people a little bit more resilient in where and how they work. And that's a direct correlation of the demand and the requirements that are created from frameworks like DevOps. I think there's still a lot of additional work, especially within the enterprise, of HugOps and blameless postmortems and demonstrating more empathy. But that's really more of a trust thing. And that then falls into the second layer that I think is improved from a culture standpoint, and that's tools like Slack. Right? We've always had communication tools. We've always had something that allowed us to chat with other people. Slack has probably been one of the most effective at improving communication across groups. And I think in large part it's because you are able to integrate more capabilities, right? When you get into chat ops and you are able to do other platform integrations, it allows you to actually get work done there, and that increases visibility, which then in turn increases trust across people, because you have more accountability, you have more transparency in what's happening. And so I think that's the other kind of cultural shift that I'm seeing a lot happen within the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned leadership. I know, having known you for a long time, I know you aspired to, at some point be a CTO, be a CIO, but more importantly, kind of be around that level of leadership. I know it helps shape the conversations that you have with people. What are some of the things from a leadership perspective or talking to leaders in groups that you find are effective in helping them understand that they have to be a part of these transformations? It can't just be the technologist. It can't just be, hey, YouTube groups get together and work. What are just some of the conversations, the tips, the suggestions that you found are helpful or resonate with them at more of a leadership level?
There's a few that really stand out, and they're very complementary to each other in my mind. The first is, as a leader, you need to be very specific about what your desired outcomes are. Right? What are the business objectives that you're trying to meet, and setting some practical goals, and not just saying, well, we have to move faster and we have to deliver better services. Be a little bit more prescriptive about what that means. Like, we need, in this year, we're going to deliver a platform for Kubernetes to support these 3 business units. And as we do that, we'll take requirements from other business units and plan that for the following year. And that leads to the second part. You have to, as a leader, play the long game, right? Look at where do you want to be 3 to 5 years from now? What's your ratio going to be between public cloud spend, on-premises spend, software as a service spend? Because budget rules so many things. And then once you've kind of defined what you're going to do there, like, how are you going to get to that spot? In the next 3 to 5 years, and what are some of those key stepping stones that you want your organization to take? Those are, I think, the 2 biggest requirements that organizations need from their leadership, is to just let them know, like, our path needs to get us here, and here are some waypoints that we should probably expect that we're going to hit along the way, and here's what I expect along the as we hit those waypoints. And then the last part is giving people some flexibility. Right? If you know that increasing your deploys per week or employees deploys per month, or just increasing your deployment frequency is going to lead to additional outages, let everybody know that, okay, I understand there's going to be outages. Let's manage that risk, and let's make sure the business understands that. Make sure we understand the rewards that we're going to get on that. And the leadership needs to be the one that sits there and guides that and is supportive, because it's inevitable. You're going to have more outages. Those outages are likely to happen anyway at some point over time. It was just a matter of how quickly you hit them. And so provide that guidance, that air cover and that support. And I think with those three things, those are some of the key leadership contributions that then lead everybody to improve all the other stuff that we've talked about.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's you're showing people that there's a bigger plan. You're showing them some of the steps along the way, and then you're really just acknowledging that, hey, this is roughly where we're going. But things will change as we go along. Things will fail, and you're going to provide them support. So no, I think those are great guidance. Josh, I know you are you're not only heavily involved in the stuff that you do work-wise, but you do a number of things outside of it. You're always kind of got projects going on. What are some of the things that people can do to either hear what you're working on, whether it's the podcast, whether it's events you're working on, ways people can reach out to you? Where are some of the areas you'll be in 2019 and places people can hear what you're talking about?
Yeah, your best bet is obviously to find me on Twitter, Josh_Atwell. I'll be pretty active there and on LinkedIn. Out in the world, I'll be attending a lot of events. That's kind of my MO. It's what I do. We'll also be hosting the NewOps Days series. So we'll have 4 new cities this year. They'll be posted up on newopsdays.org. And I'll also be doing a lot of podcasting. I actually just started firing up my blog again. I'm going to transition my blog into more of these types of conversations rather than the scripting conversations I used to do a few years back. And I'll get that out here in a couple of weeks. So not in time for the show, but you'll be able to find all of that on Twitter or LinkedIn.
Yeah, we'll get it plugged back in the show notes as well. Well, very good. Well, Josh, thank you very much for helping us kick off this Look Ahead to 2019 series. We really appreciate the insight and kind of your perspective as to what's going on in the community. Folks, before you go, I want to plug one last thing. We're always trying to help you educate yourself. And, while once a week Cloudcast may be great for you, some of you, want a little more information on a regular basis. Kind of want to recommend something that we started digging into. Aaron and I have been digging into. It's called the Tech Meme Ride Home podcast. So if you search for Ride Home on any of your podcast players, you can find it. Basically, it is the Tech Meme site wrapped up and summarized once a day. They put it out around 5 o'clock, so named appropriately for the ride home. About 20 minutes can get you plugged in for kind of the top tech news of the week, some of the top tech discussion. So if you're interested in something that's going to fill your time between the weekly Cloudcast, we recommend the Tech Meme Ride Home podcast. So with that, I want to thank Josh, and for Aaron and I, we want to thank you all for coming back in 2019. We want to thank you for listening, and as always, we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.